Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone here. Good evening, everyone at home. We are now starting one more meeting of the Allan Kardec Spiritist group of New Zealand. And tonight we're having a lecture. And before we start the lecture, we are going to. We don't have any news, I think. I think we had maybe just a reminder that we have the fraternal assistance. If anyone wants to talk to any of us, you can reach out through Facebook, through Instagram, or the email, and we can arrange some time to meet with you before the study or the lecture starts every Wednesday. And tonight we're having a lecture as we do on our last Wednesday of each month. And tonight our lecture will be in English. So next month the lecture will be in Portuguese, so the last Wednesday of the month. And before we start the lecture, we will read a page, as we usually do. It's fine?
Right.
Can I do like this?
Right.
Like that?
Yeah.
I'm just scared for the fraternal. Oh, this is from the Living Spring, number 73. Fraternal encouragement. And according to his riches in glory, my God will meet all your needs through Christ Jesus. Paul. Feel for verses 19. Do not think you are alone in the purifying struggle, for the Lord will meet all your needs. Look up to the Almighty, but from time to time, look behind you. If you are in a position to serve, then do so, and then press on. Remember your brothers and sisters who live in indigence without any resources. Think about the mothers and fathers who must listen to their children crying with no means of drying their tears. Observe the sick whose circumstances have taken them from their homes. Stop for a moment and give a friendly look to a homeless child. Contemplate the anguish of those who are mentally unbalanced, confused in the eclipse of reason. Think of the physical disabled, shackled to dolorous immobility. Think about the maternal hearts tormented by the disharmony and lack of bread in their home. From time to time, stop your hurried pace in order to help the blind who walk in darkness. Then you might find that your own suffering vanishes before your very eyes. If you have arms to help and a mind capable of reflecting on the good of your fellow beings, then you are truly better
April last year was the first Spiritist month, where we were invited by the Spiritist International Spiritist Council to talk about many different topics. And we had a discussion with Carol, Alcione, André, and myself, which was really nice to talk about this topic. And then we had four people. Now it's going to be just me. And I must apologize in first and foremost that I won't have any slides tonight. I've been quite busy, so I didn't have time to put all the material to make more interesting visually for us. But it's going to be a challenge because the first time I do a lecture without a visual aids. But I have my notes, and if you are skeptical about my work situation, since the topic, you can ask my workmate. He's here. You can tell I was really busy. My sister is always here, so they can attest that I have been quite busy. So, um, and for those who are watching from the United States, this is not wrong because you would probably spell with a K instead of a C. But New Zealand, following the British writing or orthography, we have the letter C, which in Portuguese would be Scepticism. And just coming up with the definition of skepticism is that we can think of it as having a skeptical attitude, like a dubious, a doubtful, inquisitive attitude towards a new fact. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be a new fact, but maybe new to you, and you try to question it and investigate. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about um, the struggles and the challenges that Spiritism faced from the very beginning with skepticals, and still we face nowadays, and how us Spiritists, those who are already part of the movement, part of the way of understanding life, we can use that for our advantage. Um, so just trying to think back in a historical context, we have to remember that all that study in Spiritism and the study of the psychic or mediumistic phenomena came about, it was just post the Industrial Revolution and the era of enlightenment, where people were having many different in scientific evolution as well. A lot of people finding, discovering new things about our physical world, about our material world, and a lot of the beliefs and the creeds and the different school of thoughts, especially from a point of view trying to understand our connection with the spirituality and the spiritual reality, a spiritual world, I should say, it were put to the side because people were more interested in the new discoveries that were being found after this new age of enlightenment and after the events of the Industrial Revolution. So, so yeah, and Spiritism, when the Spiritism came about, it was challenged by the very strong opposition by those who came from a scientific background or academies of studying materialism. And because, as you understand, science is very important because the aim and the objective of science is to study matter, to study the world around us, how it affects us, how we can measure it, and how we can observe it, and mainly through initially through our senses, through our vision, through our touching, through analyzing, through different instruments and different materials, different tools that came about to study the physical matter. Um, and 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 we must emphasize as well that since the beginning, Allan Kardec had a lot of respect for the science because that was happening. That was what was helping the society understand better what was happening in the physical world, and also he also admired the tendency and their the ability to investigate, to go deeper into different subjects. So when we're talking about skepticals, we have to understand that we respect everybody that may be not in line with the same thought that we spiritists have, because we understand that everybody has a different field of study. For example, if somebody studied mathematics, they were specialized on that field. If you ask that mathematician to have a discourse about chemistry or physics, he might be able to do something, but not into same depth. So every part of science we have assigned a different field that they are pretty much an expert, and they have the specific knowledge to that part of the field. So when Allan Kardec, and back then, even before he became Allan Kardec, he was Professor Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail, he had started to study and started to analyze this mediumistic or mediumship phenomena, contact with the spirits. He pretty much knew that he would be faced with that kind of situation, and when he came about to writing, even in the introduction of the Spirits book, there is a part that it talks when he has arguments and counter arguments with people that are skeptical about the spiritual phenomena, and that was in 1857. But then in 1859, because he thought it was, as we all know, because we study here every Wednesday, the Spirits book is quite dense and it's quite difficult material to really get into without a proper introduction. So he came up with another book called What is Spiritism, which is a bit like a shrunk version of the Spirits book. And on that part, in the introduction of that, he has a conversation with three skeptics, I should say, three skeptics that were in three different fields. He spoke to somebody from a scientific background, somebody from a philosophical background, and somebody from a religious background. And they all had their reasons not to believe that the mediumship phenomena and the message that was brought through this mediumship was real. And so from the beginning, he knew the importance of dealing and addressing the ideas that goes against the ideals that Spiritism brought and further from the message of Jesus Christ. But in presenting counter arguments, he also mentioned that it was not the goal or the objective of Spiritism to convert anybody, to make. It's just presenting what was brought by the spirits and what it went through a very thorough study and analysis by Allan Kardec, and presenting it as a proposition, not as a fact of conversion like we can see in other types of religions, not judging anybody either. So the game was not to convince anybody, but just somehow by analyzing the counter argument against what Spiritism believes, it will only make our belief stronger, because you have to come up with points, different perspectives that will make the foundation of your belief, of your faith, even stronger. So everything was made really respectful. It's about 100 pages, so it's a very deep study, but we're going to be focusing more on probably the harshest critics of Spiritism, which were the scientific background. Of course, philosophical and religious is a bit more, how can I say, a bit more difficult to navigate through it, because we're talking about other people's religions, but we're going to be focusing on the scientific institutions. So just as I was mentioning that science has a goal and objective of studying matter, but as Allan Kardec put it in the Spirits book, it says Spiritism is a science that deals with the nature, the origin, and destiny of spirits and their relationship with the corporeal world. So once again, I don't have this line, but I'll read it again. Spiritism is a science that deals with the nature, origin, and destiny of spirits. So that, in its own definition, it already goes against something that the science itself studies, which is matter. So we study something that is different to what science. So, and we're not against science. In fact, Allan Kardec said, if you are studying Spiritism and you find in science, if there is something that negates or denies what Spiritism says, go with science, because that's been scientifically proven. So, and in the matter that we study something that goes beyond matter, and science cannot yet attain or measure or perceive, then it's out of the realm. They can't really have a proper deep opinion and study, because they measure everything by what we sense. And the trouble with that, it can be a little bit of arrogance, of finding out that we know everything that is there to be known, going against the Socratic thought that, because once Socrates was known as to be the wisest man because he knows the limitations of his wisdom. He said that I know nothing. Therefore, then the oracle said that he was the wisest man because he knows that his limitations of his knowledge. Because sometimes, the scientific field can be contained in themselves and think that they know everything, or they are basing everything that they have within their own limitations of matter. For example, in 1894, the idea of Alfred Michelson, he was a Nobel Prize winning physicist in 1907. Actually, he was the first American to win that Nobel Prize in science. And he said that the more important fundamental laws and facts of physical science have all been discovered. That was in 1894. How many discoveries have we had since then? We're still discovering new ideas and new theories have been proven. We just had, maybe 2 years ago, we had been proven of a gravitational wave. There was a theory left by Albert Einstein, but only now they could perceive it. They could actually prove it in a scientific way. So then we're just finding out even more about black holes, and now that we have a new telescope that is out there, James Webb, I think it's called James Webb, and we're still finding out stuff about science. So the idea that here he said the more important fundamental laws and facts of physical science have all been discovered, and these are now so firmly established that the possibility of their ever being supplanted in consequence of new discovery is exceedingly remote. I'll read that again a bit slower now. The more important fundamental laws and facts of physical science have all been discovered, and these facts are so firmly established that the possibility of their ever being supplanted in consequence of new discovery is remote. So that's already been proven wrong, because we're finding more and more stuff about the physical world. For example, the scientists now, they only found out that there's only an observable universe, they can measure only 4%. 96% of the universe is what is known as the dark matter, which they don't know what it is. So most of physical stuff, it's still unknown to us. So, and as we're talking about the science. Now, if you go into consideration what the information that the spirits have brought to us about our spiritual reality, and all the fluids, the universal fluid that is everywhere, that we all compass in it, that more and more they are trying to find out through science as well. But of course, we are still far away from these discoveries, because they are they're leaving out the important fact of the spirit, of the soul. So how can you prove that spirits are real and exist, maybe not in the physical world, but in a different dimension, a different reality, if you don't believe you're spirits? Even the fact that you don't believe you are a spirit, that you are a consequence of a lot of matter and a combination of chemical activities in your brain, that your thought, your consciousness. But the tide is changing a little bit. If there is a podcast, very interesting podcast that I followed it up with reading a book. It's called Where is My Mind by Mark Gober, which he's not a spiritist, he's not a spiritualist, but from a scientific point of view, he started to study consciousness, and through many different experiments that have been studied by different sciences, not in the mainstream, but near-death experiences, telekinesis, mediumship, even healing properties, healing with the help of fluid magnified water and the spiritual treatment or the pass or passing that we do here as well. So a lot of these studies and science started to take an interest in the lack of looking for proof in the science itself. But we have to remember once again that the skepticism is really important because Allan Kardec he was skeptical when it first came about, the mediumship phenomena. He was already a 50-year-old teacher. He was not a young scientist or somebody looking for new adventure. He came across one of his friends was Mr. His name was Fortier. Fortier is a French name. He Yeah, Mr. Fortier. So he said, "Oh, come along. There's this new trend happening in France now, where these tables they're moving, they're shaking, they think, they give answers, they give like logical answers." And then he said, and I quote, "I'll only believe it if they prove to me that a table has a brain to think and nerves to feel." So he didn't believe straight away in the phenomena, in the physical phenomena, because he knew that it's impossible that a table know things because it's a table. So when he went in looking for an answer, what's happening here? It was an investigation. He's skeptical. He didn't want to believe, but through his studies and different ways of communicating with the spirits, that's where the spiritist doctrine was born. So skepticism was really important from that point of view, and he used the scientific method, which is analyzing all the different communication in comparison. So whenever he had a communication that came through, and there was, let's say, there were a bunch of them, let's say 20 that said one thing, and then there was one that said something else, he would ignore that one because it was against the universal truth that was coming from different spirits. So skepticism was really important in that sense, that even though skepticism coming from a point of view that somebody that doesn't even believe in the spirits, we shouldn't go any further and try to convince them or trying to tell them what they should believe in, because even Jesus said that do not in Matthew chapter 7 verse 6, Jesus said, "Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces." So nothing against pigs or not comparing those who are skeptical to pigs, but there was an analogy that Jesus used: do not waste your time. And it was not the only time that he told us that we shouldn't really be convincing anybody of anything. He also on Matthew, another chapter 10 from 5 to 6, Jesus said, these 12 Jesus sent forth, or these 12 disciples Jesus sent forth, and told them, saying, "Do not go into the way of the Gentiles." For those who don't remember, Gentiles were the pagan people, the people that didn't even believe in just one God. They were not monotheists, they were polytheists. So do not go to the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans do not enter, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Because even Jesus knew that it would be easier to approach those who have a concept about at least one God. It was harder to explain to the Gentiles who believed in many gods that to accept the word of Jesus being the Son of God or representing God on earth, to understand and to follow that and to respect that. So a couple of messages there for us as well, that we shouldn't go out of our way, respect the skeptics, but not try to go into a way that you are trying to force our point of view in our experience. And yeah, so once again, Professor Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail, he was skeptical prior to his dedication to the study of the mediumship phenomena, and he also, as I mentioned, he uses that the scientific method. And because at that time, as I mentioned, there was a lot of just soon after the French Revolution, there was the era of the revolution, the 19th century, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution. So all society was in turmoil, trying to find the truth, trying to find a better way to live, trying to find the understanding a little bit more about the reality as it was. And we are coming to a time now that it is a little bit more understood, not only spiritism, but the connection with this physical world and the spiritual world as well. And there's a lot of more acceptance and more even search, because as we know in spiritism, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, have a human experience. So it is natural for us to look for this truth, this spiritual truth. Many look for it in many different areas, in the pleasures of this planet. It can be all the way from eating to drinking to smoking to nightlife to gambling to things that are sometimes numb our senses and make us have this feeling of happiness. But our true happiness and our true essence, it is spiritual. So there has been a more in-depth look, at least a look into what we are about to find out, which is our spiritual reality. Um, and in that, we have, especially in the spiritist um, um, circles here and in Brazil, in many parts of the world, there's a lot of stuff to read, a lot of stuff to follow. We live in the era of information and technology, so we have pretty much very powerful computers in our pockets, and we have access to a lot of different stuff. And that's where it comes, skepticism these days become very important for all of us, because we are exposed to a lot of information from spiritism or not, even politics, society, trends, culture, and we have a lot of information coming to us, and it's very easy just to swipe right. We're talking about swiping right or left, or give a thumbs up, or spreading information even before we know if it's true or not. How many of us? I just looked at a the word escaped me now, at a headline from something, and then you just, oh yeah, that sounds good, and forward through. We've actually, before going through the sift of knowledge and finding out, is this actually true, and actually spreading misinformation around. I have. I have a few times. I think we all have, in this moment that we are. So it's important to know our responsibility, especially when it comes to spiritist messages, to be a little bit more cautious. Does that follow through, first of all, the message left by Christ? And we have all to remember that when we talk about the greatest commandment, which is a passage in the Bible, and I believe is the chapter love your neighbor as yourself, and which is about the law of love. And at the beginning of that chapter, I'll read that passage because it's really important, and we're always talking about this, talking about the greatest commandment. So whenever you find a message, Spiritist or Christian, because that's more of a Christian message, which is the fundamental, the basis of Spiritism. He goes, when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had put the Sadducees to silence after an argument with the Sadducees kind of bowed their heads and understood what Christ was saying. They were gathered together. Then one of the Pharisees, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him. So it's a question to try to test Jesus, and saying, Master, Which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, You shall love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first great commandment. And the second is like this: You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law of the prophets. Matthew chapter 22, verses 34 to 40, which is basically the law of love. Love God above all, with your mind, with your heart, with your soul, and love your brother or love your neighbor as yourself. So it's a very compact commandment, because if you don't love yourself, you can't love God, your neighbor, and you can't love God. So if it's a message is spiritist, or which by default is a Christian message, this has nothing to do with love, then it's it's a little bit, like we say here in New Zealand, a little bit dodgy, a little bit dubious, a little bit skeptical. Yeah. So that's the first rule, because we follow Jesus Christ, and He told us that. I'll now repeat: on these two commandments, loving God and loving your brother as yourself, hang all the law of the prophets. So we have to be careful. We have a responsibility to what we read, what we pass on, and the message we'll be giving out. It is a responsibility. Um, and Also, Erastus gives us a very good um, message. But before I mention Erastus, I should probably mention Paul as well. Paul said that everything comes from God. Take everything in, retain what is good. Retain what is good. In my shadow. Retain what is good. So the world is out there. There's a lot of in English people say the world is your oyster. So it's all is up there. It's a big world with a lot of information. You are able to take in everything, but just retain what is good, because a lot of stuff out there that is no good. And Erasmus goes even a bit further when he's talking about the manifestations of the spirits, because this information comes through us, through a conversation with a friend, through the news that you watch, through a lot of information coming through us. But when it comes to spirits communication, there's a lot of how can I use another word? Can I use a lot of mystical, a lot of yeah, mystical, and a lot of mystery behind it, and a lot of coming from a spirit. Oh, it must be true, coming from the spirits. But I have to remember that not all spirits are spiritists. Not all spirits are Christians. Not all spirits are on the good path. Spirits are just like us. If you go to any pub in New Zealand or anywhere in the world, you find all sorts. If you go to the market, supermarket, you find on traffic, you find so many different types of people. The spiritual world is the same. So just because the manifestation is said to be given by a spirit, and it's quite common these days. You find online where you have a manifestation, somebody that is doing a psychophonia, or somebody that is channeling with a spirit and talking online, and we know that the spiritist is that's supposed to be in a room with a serious study group, not to be streamed online as a live on Instagram or Facebook. So that's already a first thing. But what Erasmus is telling us, not judge anybody, but just what I believe to, and I follow what is on these, especially on the Mediums book where I took this part from. And I'll read slowly again because we don't have a slide to follow. And so Erastus, which was one of the spirits that helped Allan Kardec with many messages. This one is it really caught my attention when preparing this lecture. In doubt, abstain. That's his advice when we come across a message from a spirit. If the spirit is a bit dubious, a little bit, like I said, dodgy, abstain. So ignore. Says one of your old proverbs. That's one of our proverbs. Admit nothing that has not certain evidence of truth. As soon as a new opinion is brought to light, if it seems ever so little doubtful, pass it through the crucible of reason and logic. Pass it through the crucible of reason and logic. What reason and good sense refuse, reject boldly. Once again, what reason and good sense refuse, reject boldly. Better, and that's where it really hits the nail in the head. Better reject 10 truths than admit one single lie, a single false theory. And you might scratch your head, wow. So ignore or reject 10 truths. So I'm rejecting the truth. But like we say in Portuguese, we say that's the same in Portuguese, a mentira tem perna curta. So meaning that a lie has really short legs. It only goes that far. The truth catches up. So even if you deny 10 truths now, because you are unable to understand that truth will become evident in the future. So when you first read it, it's like, wow, that's a bit harsh, it's a little bit extreme, right? To avoid and deny 10 truths in favor of accepting one lie. So the truth will catch up. The truth will always catch up. So, and I think it's very important as well when we are studying, especially when that part, because that part was taken from chapter 9, the moral influence of the medium regarding spirit manifestation. And I think this is so powerful that it goes beyond. It goes beyond spirit manifestation. It goes through anything in life, even spiritism, right? So if you accept anything that is fed to you, and we are fed a lot. Before, to get information, you have to either open the newspaper or watch the news, and even then, a lot of news manipulation, even nowadays. So it's very easy to be scrolling through our social media, which I'm also guilty of. We are humans, but take a time and think about it. Is this real? And I'm actually using an example here that just came to my mind, that one of the studies, one of our friends, she used to be here with us. She's still alive. She just moved to the United States. Luciana, she gave an example of the 4 filters, which I think was Socrates as well. If somebody comes to you telling something, an information, oh, I have news for you. Okay, before you tell me anything, is this what you're telling me is true? Do you know for a fact that it's true? Oh, I'm not sure. Somebody told me. Okay, so that's already one filter that it's denied. The second filter is is it useful? Is it going to be is information or this news or this even sometimes gossip? Is this going to be useful for me? Am I going to learn something from it? No. So then another filter that's gone down. Is it going to be harmful to somebody? Oh yeah, maybe something about that person. Okay, so if it's something that is not true, not useful or harmful, why are you telling me? So this is something that we could use that in our life. This information coming, is it true? Is it important? Am I going to learn something from it? Or is it just hearsay or being the truth? Or is it going to be harmful to somebody? Or if it's going to be harmful, to pass it on. So that's the filter that we must have with skepticism. But on the other hand, as I mentioned earlier, this skepticism will only make us our beliefs and our faith stronger. Because if you go to the chapter 19 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, which talks about the faith moves mountain, we come across a very important message by Kardec. And there are many axioms or many sayings, many proverbs that Kardec and the spirits left us. But this one is quite important because he gave us the idea of two contrasting types of faith. The blind faith, that you just believe because you are told or because somebody requires you to have faith or because you are afraid of something happening if you don't have that faith, or the rationalized faith. You believe, but not blindly. You believe because you have analyzed it, You were skeptical about it. You studied from many different perspectives. You maybe even applied to your life, and it makes sense. And therefore you believe. And also, we just recently be studying, for those who are missing out on Wednesdays, you can come here because we finished that chapter. It was a long chapter, right, guys? About blessed are the afflicted, um, and um, and um, and it talks about when faith to go through the afflictions in life, and we have many afflictions. It goes beyond faith. It becomes a certainty. It becomes a certainty in the future life that everything shall pass, including this. This moment is hard. I'm going through a very hard time, physically, emotionally, psychologically. Sometimes it's harder to even recognize you are going through a hard time, but everything shall pass. And that certainty in the future life, that's when your faith is rationalized. When you think about it, when you analyze it, look at many different angles, apply it in your life, observe other people using in their lives, because we can learn a lot. We don't have to go through all the mistakes in the list. We can watch others and learn from other people's mistake, and hopefully giving your hand to help them out. Because just like the first reading that Carol read to us on the Living Spring, using that power that we have, that gift that we're giving to help others, not just analyze and learn from their mistakes, but hopefully giving a hand to help as well. But we can learn a lot, and that learning, that observance in our daily lives about not only this greatest commandment, but all the different principles that we find in the Spiritism, that God is a creator, our Father, that the immortality of the soul, we are immortal beings, that there is a spiritual world, we can connect to the spiritual world. It's easier and it's more intense for those who are mediums, but we all have this power of connecting to the spiritual world through a good inspiration, through a good thought, through good advices that we get from our spiritual friends, through reincarnation, through all the different, the law of cause and effect, free will, all these bases. So anything that you see online that goes against any of these principles, because believe it or not, I got said this lecture, questioning that if we have free will or not, and questioning the justice of God. Is there really justice, God's justice? I spiritist lecture, I couldn't believe, like, okay, I think somebody needs to, I have to actually, I'll have to study more about it because, I'm sure that Spiritism give us that free will was given to us from the moment we were created as spirits. And that free will comes, the other side of the coin is our responsibility of cause and effect. So anything that you see online that it goes against any of these principles, be skeptical. So we have to deal with skepticism coming from outside, people that are skeptical about it. Once again, being respectful, being caring, being loving our neighbor, even no matter if he has the same belief or not. Because it doesn't matter what we tell people. It doesn't matter how we present our experiences with Spiritism. Because once again, I have to look down again, guys, sorry, in the chapter where, now, where is that chapter? The chapter where is in Gospel according to Spiritism. The number escapes me, but when the spirits tell us that there will be false Christs and false prophets. The idea that if somebody yells, I am Christ, and without any actions to back it up, be skeptical. Because the words are not going to prove anything. Like I love that saying in English, that the proof is in the pudding. Yeah, I love pudding, especially the Brazilian pudding, condensed milk pudding. Or even like a steamed pudding is nice with the custard on top. That's good too. But I digress. The proof of your allegiance or your not only allegiance but your work towards Christ's message is with your actions. So if somebody's talking a lot and about, you know, Christ and this, I am the prophet, and now the trend is to say the reincarnation. I'm the reincarnation of this, that person reincarnation of that. It doesn't matter. What it matters is the work that is done. The work that is done. Ah, don't worry, it's going to be less than that. I'm just giving a sign. 10 minutes. Now she's going to put applause. But yeah, like a little studio here, folks. Everybody laugh. I hope you laughed at home too. Um, um, so yeah, it's the most important part is to be able to do that, and to be able to show to others our faith, our rationalized faith, by our actions, by helping others, by being there for people, by giving a hand, giving a hug, giving a smile, giving a word of advice, without being in somebody's face, without telling people what they should or they shouldn't do, but just giving a word of advice, being somebody's friend. And that's already a big, is better than telling them about the 10 different moral laws that are on chapter 3 of the Spirit's book. Yeah, so that's where really it's important. But skepticism, it's also important to give us the other side of it, which is the um, another English word that escapes me, credulity, to believe, to be able to believe in something. So skepticism will only make us, our faith stronger. So we have the right to doubt. We have the duty to question and to analyze, because that's what Spiritism is. We just don't believe because it's written in a book, or because it came through the mediumship of somebody that is famous, or because it's on the internet. No, we should, or even because I'm saying here, do your research, because we are responsible for our knowledge. We are responsible for what we're learning, and we have many books, we have many manuals, we have many channels on YouTube, we have the materials out there. We only have to slowly um, increase our base of knowledge, so we can go through these stages of comparing all the studies that we have. We have many books, like I mentioned, we have many different lectures. So it is up to us to go forward, and just like on the last chapter of the Genesis, because the time has come, the time is coming, and actually time has come. It's not coming; it's here now. There's a shift happening on planet Earth as we speak, where, as I mentioned, the people are getting fed up, and getting people a bit lost, some of them, because they're finding that happiness, they're finding out that you can't buy happiness. Beatles already said, you know, back in the 60s, I think, or 70s, can't buy me love. You can't buy love. You can buy things that will make you happy temporarily, but the real love and the real love that Jesus gave us on the Great Commandment, that can't be bought. You have to experience it. You have to go through it. You have to go through these motions of happiness and sadness, of health and sickness. And you have to go through these stages of living this life so you can reach that. But skepticism will make us, our foundation a bit stronger, so we can build our house on concrete, not on sand. Because when these sufferings come, and when the other skepticals come to us, and the life put us on a washing machine, and we feel like be tumbling around, we are strong, and we have this belief, our faith is rationalized, and we have the certainty that everything is happening for a reason, and we're going to go through this. And we are not alone. We have each other as spiritist friends, we have family, and we have the spiritual friends that are always helping us, but we just need to be open to their inspiration. Um, well, I think that's all I had prepared, and I think is all I have time before the 5 minutes card comes up. So, is there any messages from Instagram or Facebook, or any questions that somebody might have, or any comments? Because I think this is me. That's me for tonight. I apologize. Like, once again, I don't have any visual aids. But I hope that I was able through, even if I'm reading something, I was able to give you this idea of keep digging in, keep studying, keep, and keep analyzing. Don't believe everything that is out there, because there's a lot of things that we can look, but only a few that we can actually retain in our own capability. All right. So, any questions? Any?
If you should write a question online, I will read it here.
Yeah.
But I'll also say that I was thinking that I was in a yoga class a couple weeks ago, and the teacher had the practice that we had a very nice questioning that was around being skeptical on statements that people make about yourself and telling how we grow up listening uh, listening to people saying things about us and our personality, like, oh, you are very shy, you are very organized, you are a person that is very, um, your heart is very big, and sometimes nice things, sometimes things that are not so nice, and how we have to question that too. How life changes, we change, we grow, and we have the capability of being whoever we want to be. It's not because we have been something our whole lives that we cannot become someone else, that we cannot become something better, that we cannot become something different, and that we should question also those statements that we hear about ourselves and that we make about ourselves, that we are never the same people, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting and how hard it is to get out of the box that sometimes the world puts us on. And that's that is questioning. Sometimes the news is much easier than questioning our lives and our day-to-day and aspects. Nobody should be part of it also. And then through the lecture, I was also thinking how important it is that we are questioning and still being rational, right? That don't forget that we still have a foundation that all things that we believe, that it's not because we're questioning that we don't believe in anything, that we should still believe in science. We should still question where the information is coming from, because we need to be able to have our faith placed on something, that we need to be able to have that strong foundation, those sources that we trust to build our faith on. So it doesn't mean being skeptical, doesn't mean not trusting anything or anyone, but we have to get the right measure of that to be able to keep having faith and to be able to make sense and to be rational.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if we don't, we run the risk of living in autopilot. We get into a pattern of behavior, and we keep doing the same thing and then when you realize 5 years has passed, 10 years has passed, and it's still in the same situation, it's still the same. Yeah, so it's always important to be questioning, yourself and your the inputs that comes to your life, your friendships, your everything. It's always important to be, because we are given intelligence for a reason, right? We're given this reincarnation for a reason when you're coming more to the spiritist side of it. And yeah, so it's something important for us to um, to use that creatively, not just to deny everything and not just, like Paulo said, retain what is good, and what you use your reason and your intellect to go forward. Apply that to your feelings as well, because that's going to influence your feelings as to how you feel. And yeah, these thoughts, these ideas generate, coming now once again coming from a spiritist point of view, we create a like an engine of vibrations that will attract other spirits to you, and they will help you in the different direction that you want to go through. Because you'll be surrounded. If you have good thoughts, good feelings, that will be able to give you a foundation and base to move forward. Yeah, it would be like a little push, for yourself.
Yeah, I was thinking that what is the if you are not, if you don't have skepticism, you're just walking through life blindly believing on what everyone tells you. But also, if you just deny and refute everything and don't believe in anything, you're also walking through life blindly,
Yeah.
because you're just denying all the information that is clearly true, that is coming your way, and you're just denying everything. So in the end, there is no difference, right? You have to find the balance.
Absolutely.
Between the two.
So once again, thanks everybody.
Oh, there's this one more comment. I was just reading this one. From now more than ever with AI, be skeptical. Thanks for the great and
No problem. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, for next week, we have another study group. So for those who are staying at home, we wish you all the best. And I will say farewell. Kakite.